Здравствуйте, в эфире
Hello, on the air, the program Time. 6 people died last night as a result of a train collision in the Nizhegorодsk district. In Grozny, today talks resumed. The main issue is the status of Chechnya. Andrei Kozyrev and Pavel Gorachov arrived today in London for an expanded meeting of the contact group on Bosnia. Muscovites today for the first time saw the new monument to Vladimir Vysotsky. The talks on the peaceful resolution in Chechnya began today at 1200 hours Moscow time, the building of the OSCE in Grozny. Of concern are reports that the head of the Dudaev delegation, Usman Imayev, had a relapse of an ailment which implies diplomatic complications, so he didn't participate in the round today. Journalists again today gathered at the building of the OSCE mission in Grozny. Everyone awaited the now beginning of the fourth round of the peace talks on the regularization of the situation in Chechnya. As always, the first to emerge was Aslan Maskadov. He lives in the adjacent building. Later, members of the Russian delegation arrived by car. Its head, Vyacheslav Mikhailov, confirmed that the position of the federal organs remains unchanged, the essence of which is in the wholeness of the Russian state and a special status for the Chechnya Republic. In various forms, its process is self-definition, but within the framework of the federation. The aide of the President of Russia, Mikhail Krasnov, stated that the dialogues could last for several more days, but they would not be lengthy. Moscow won't permit the gunmen to exploit the talks as a cover-up to further their combat activities. Meanwhile, according to data from the operative services, the situation in Grozny is escalating. Last night, on almost all the block posts, the gunmen launched attacks. There was even an incident near the camp of the Ministerial Emergency Situation where the state delegation of Russia is staying. Here is how the nocturnal events were commented on by a member of the Chechen delegation, the field commander, Akhmat Kazakayev. Last night there were numerous instances of crossfire. How can you comment on that? This is precisely why we're asking the Russian side to begin the actions to realize the block of military matters to prevent this crossfire, to avoid unnecessary casualties, at least during the period of the dialogue procedures, and we're asking matters to be resolved in a peaceful manner. We can realize matters peacefully only after the block of military issues is resolved. That is, the situation is under control. Concerning our subdivisions and those gunmen, everything is under the full control of the head commander and the head of the general staff. Who's shooting? This you have to ask the local officials. Incidentally, Usman Imayev did not appear after all. Do you know how he feels, and will he come today? We can't say now. And what's happened with him? Well, he's become ill. He's not made of steel. There's so much stress here. He's overexhausted, yes. How much can a man's nerves take? Today's dialogues lasted for more than 6 hours, and what was their result? Several options were examined in a sequence, and finally we selected the version stated on 4 lines. And what's on those 4 lines, you'll find out tomorrow. The final option for consideration was adopted. Our work progressed very well today. Tomorrow we continue at 10 o'clock local time. The unlawful armed formations in Chechnya currently number up to 4,500 actively functioning gunmen. They also have a mobile anti-aircraft missile device and complexes, both produced domestically and abroad. According to the military intelligence which Interfax received during last night through the territory of Dagestan, the Dudaev gunmen received 10 anti-aircraft Stinger launchers. Supposedly they were purchased from an armed Afghan group. Grozny is again flooded with gunmen. It's not surprising that lately here there's a noticeable increase in the number of diversions and terrorist acts. Last night alone, more than 20 cases of shooting by gunmen was recorded at the block posts and commandant's compounds. 6 explosive devices were found in the Severny, or northern airport. Protection of the airport was assigned to the 205th Separate Motor Artillery Brigade, which was formed just recently, and Grozny is its permanent site of location. mission. The mission of the brigade is a peacekeeping function to support law and order in 2 airports, to remove mines from oil plants and other domestic industrial objects. The brigade has already embarked on fulfilling of its mission. Its block posts are on duty around the clock, and the military construction teams are erecting a town for the brigade near the airport Severny. Here they will have all the amenities, housing for soldiers, officers, storage facilities for equipment, and official buildings. The construction teams are pressed. 2 teams are working literally 2 shifts, and already the first housewarmings have been held. Until the 20th of April, this was a minefield stretching to Grozny itself, but now, as you can see, the first barracks and staff buildings are being occupied by soldiers and officers and women's dormitories. The commander of the federal forces in Grozny was introduced to the commander of the internal forces of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Russia, Anatoly Romanov. It's known he's a specialist in combat training for elite units and was involved in the problems of protecting objects of particular significance. In Chechnya today, a new chairman of the Supreme Court was introduced. By decree of the President of Russia, Nazhan Makayev was appointed. The top officials in the prosecutor's office in the Stavropol Rim area held a press conference today where journalists were told of the course of the investigation of the Budyonovsk tragedy, and there a sensational announcement was heard, conveyed by Interfax, that Shamil Basayev is located in Chechnya, not far from the OSCE mission building. In the event that Basayev seeks asylum abroad, the corresponding contacts with Interpol have been established. Judging from this announcement, the Rim prosecutor's office, law enforcement organs know Basayev's whereabouts, but for now only express hope that sooner or later he will be brought to face justice. The specifics of the operations of the prosecutor investigation are such that it rarely gives instantaneous results. This explains the absence of operative information from the walls of that service during the Budyonovsk events. But already now one may speak of preliminary results of the investigation. The investigation has established the more precise number of gunmen who penetrated the Stavropol area, 120 to 130, also known as the precise route of their travel. As of today, already 17 resolutions were issued with arrest warrants and charges to be filed, to be served to these 17 people. What regards the criminal charges to be filed in respect to the reasons for permitting passage to the gunmen to enter the territory of the Rim, currently we are in the phase of pressing charges against employees of the block posts, and approximately already 10 people have been arraigned. The guilt of the vehicle inspection police is complicated by the fact that in advance they were forewarned of possible insurgents by gunmen. As of today, 1,900 people have already been questioned. 1,621 of them were recognized as victims. There were no cases established of hostage abuse. Work continues because in the Rim there are 50,000 Chechens residing, and the prosecutor of the Rim, Yuri Lushnikov, admitted that there are illegal residents among them who improperly use financial benefits here and subsidies and enjoy protection from certain officials and also from the militia. In the Stavropol Rim, it was learned that there's a new appointment. The President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, appointed as head of the administration of the Stavropol Rim area, Pyotr Marchenko, the former deputy head of the administration. In the chronicle of international news, the top topic, of course, is Yugoslavia. At emergency debates in the British Parliament, the view was expressed that the withdrawal of the UN peacekeepers from Bosnia-Herzegovina is a risky action from a military point of view and probably would lead to the conflagration of a broader scale of conflict. The Russian ministers, Kozyrev and Grachev, have already arrived today in London for an extended meeting of the contact group on Bosnia. President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, today spoke on that topic with the Chancellor of the FRG, Helmut Kohl, about what is happening now in former Yugoslavia. The commentary from our program. On the threshold of the most representative international meeting on the resolving of the Bosnia-Herzegovina situation, the circumstances in the hot point have escalated further. Serbs, in effect, have captured one more Eastern Muslim enclave, Žepa. According to the representative of the UN peacekeeping forces in Sarajevo, Alexander Ivanko, the Muslim leader, Aliyev Izetbegovic, admitted that Žepa has fallen and consented for the evacuation of the peaceful residents from the enclave. After that is completed, the Serbs, and their forces are located around the city, will will enter the city. Together with this, fighting has resumed on other fronts in the west near Bihać and south of Sarajevo. According to the observers, the latest offensive by government forces has the objective of pulling aside Serb forces from the third Muslim enclave in the east, Gorazde. And the fact that Serbs intend to seize it is revealed by the fact that their leader, Radovan Karadzic, has offered to trade Gorazde for certain quarters of the Serb part of Sarajevo. Moreover, Karadzic stated that the Serbs are already claiming 56% of the territory of Bosnia-Herzegovina and not the 49% as was provided in the plan of the contact group. The relentlessness and ambitiousness of Bosnian leaders, the Muslims and Serbs both, forces the international community to seek various countermeasures so that the fire of war would not escalate further. And on Friday in London, the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and Defence of the contact group of the UN, European Union and countries which have dispatched their peacekeepers to Bosnia will have to finally decide what to do next. There are many options, including the deployment of the Rapid Response Force or the withdrawal of all the peacekeepers from Bosnia. But in that case, the escalation of war is unavoidable. In Russia today, another emergency situation occurred. Trains have collided. At the Tortale-Kamenishe crossing in the Nizhegorod district, where a major railway accident occurred, work continues to liquidate the aftermath of the accident. For reasons still unclear, several cars from the middle of a cargo train, including 3 tanks, the tank cars carrying flammable gas, were derailed and found themselves on an oncoming track along which a postage baggage train was proceeding. As a result of the collision, one of the tank cars with flammable gas exploded. 5 people died. 4 were in the cabin of the locomotive of the postage baggage train. 24 people received burns and injuries. 30 wagon cars were derailed. A fire erupted. This morning, another tank car exploded, from which critically heated gas continued to leak all night. A member of the emergency team was killed. 2 more received serious burns. They are in critical condition and are in hospital. Traffic on this stretch has been interrupted for an extended period of time. A staff was created, which is directing the restorational task, and the railway prosecutors launched an investigation. The Ministry of Emergency Situation more often faces the need to resort to urgent measures, so today's training is an objective need. If one happens to visit the Frunze airport today, the former airport, but now the renowned trade point of Moscow, one could think that the American Emergency Service 911 has moved in. But no, evacuating victims from the roof of a burning building and from the site of a car accident was an Aeromobile Rescue Brigade of the Ministry of Emergency Situation of Russia. Don't be afraid, the emergency situations were pre-planned and prepared to demonstrate the work of the 2 new helicopters, the VO-105s, built especially for the Ministry of Emergency Situations by a German-French partner. One is a rescue search helicopter, the second is a medical first aid helicopter. They look more like toys made by a child engineer. They can be disassembled and reassembled within 15 minutes. The VO-105 is so compact that it can fit into a cargo compartment of an Il-46, but despite that, after the demonstration of its capabilities, the rescue craft inspired trust in all those present. Daily, on Moscow roads, accidents occurred and people die. Often, those die who have not received timely aid. Medical vehicles today are not capable of squeezing through traffic jams to reach the accident sites. Multi-story buildings on fire, given the technical capabilities of the fire services today, are also a real threat to human life. To survive and save is the motto of the rescuers, and this can only be followed only with constantly striving for perfection. But there are only 2 helicopters. They're not made in our country, and they were demonstrated at a closed airport near an exhibit of outdated models of the known Russian airplane design, Pavel Sukhov, during the year of its centennial. We've never had this before in our country, and the entire world is doing it. Our aircraft engineers took a time out, 1.5 to 2 years, to create crafts of this class. The chronicle of Russian political news is either supplemented with rumors or denials of those rumors. Specifically, the press secretary, the president of Russia, Sergei Medvedev, today denied yet another rumor that a presidential decree exists which appoints the Colonel General Mikhail Bursakov director of the Federal Security Service. So there is no such decree, and the Colonel General himself, Mikhail Bursakov, is extremely surprised by the circulation of these rumors. Today, on the eve of parliamentary elections, the deputies of the State Duma decided to hold a special session to discuss the most imperative bills. Much was said about how much we are going to receive as income. The Federative Council also devoted time to this topic. With details, our correspondents from both chambers. spending all day yesterday in discussion with the government, because of which the legislative work of the deputies was not very productive. Today the Duma gathered for another session to make up for lost time. Especially ahead are the parliamentary vacations, and during the entire work period, many hours were spent on political disputes. In today's agenda, there were more than 40 documents listed to discuss 5 concerned additions to the budget. The Duma proposed the government find funds to increase minimum salaries through adding budget revenues. One more, now traditional Duma topic, is pension legislation. The deputies decided that now state pensions should be subjected to compulsory indexation. The arithmetic calculation of the indexation is quite complicated. The law, as usual, must still go through a vote in the Federative Council, just as the amendments to the law on military service and obligations. The State Duma cut the term of the military service in the army from 2 to 1.5 years for those serving in combat regions. The deputies adopted several more amendments regarding extensions and also the term of service in the army. The morning session in the Federative Council was one of the last before the beginning of parliamentary vacations and began in an unexpected way. Deputies were working on the agenda, and here a deputy rose to the podium, Mentimir Shamiev, the president of Tatarstan. The insulting remarks made by the chairman of the Federative Council, Vladimir Filipovich Shumeka, made against Mr. Ardinba, showed his disdain for the Abkhazian peoples, as the people of Abkhazia themselves expressed, and these remarks should be classified as provocational ones. I never personally insulted Vladislav Ardinba. Only a court can decide about his personal actions, and I have no right to weigh his actions. I assess him only as a politician. Finally, one more previously unplanned point was included in the agenda to put to vote about the statements made by the chairman of the Federative Council. However, the deputies voted against, and this question was not even included in the agenda. Thereby, they supported their speakers. The senators moved to other points in the agenda. The first was a bill of utmost importance for all Russia about the referendum. The main point in the law provides that the referendum can't be held during a state of emergency on the territory of Russia, nor 3 months after it's lifted. However, such an important law should have been passed by three-quarter vote, but they were not present. Unsuccessful was the attempt of the senators to overcome a presidential veto on the law guaranteeing provisions for the operations of Parliament. There was also a shortage of votes. But before the break, they adopted a law on a subsistence minimum. In the opinion of those who spoke, the subsistence minimum is the main thing which should be isolated in discussing social chapters of the budget for future years. The discussions are belabored in the law on forming the Federative Council itself. In a few days, the period for review expires, and if they don't finish examining it, the law is automatically adopted by in the Duma's version, and that means selectivity, which the heads of the administration oppose. The deputy chairman, Anatoly Dolgolaptsev, feels the law is not adequate at all. The main focus isn't defined how to combine the interests of the country as a whole and the regions individually. Without regional representation, this can't be done at all. The law doesn't reflect this idea at all. And so, without voting, the senators went for their break, but in the afternoon, the session didn't continue with the discussion because the required number of deputies did not gather. Yesterday, the acting chairman of the Central Bank of Russia, Tatiana Paramonova, didn't grant an interview to the press, but today she was prepared to speak and responded to some questions of interest. As is known, there is nothing more permanent than temporary things. After yesterday's session of the State Duma, joining the temporary ranks of leadership was Tatiana Paramonova. She, as previously, is only the acting chairman of the Central Bank. In the agency Interfax, she responded to the press's questions. The president, for the second time, submitted the candidacy of Paramonova as chairman of the Central Bank. The Duma, no less consecutively, declined that candidacy. What's the problem? The president has been submitting my candidacy, I think, because he knows my professional and my human qualities. What regards the parliament, it seems to me that the first time I was simply not well known by all the parliamentarians in order to make a concrete judgment about me. Now, I think the situation has changed somewhat. Many in Parliament know my professional position, which may be in ways affected the financial interests of certain structures. Now, Tatiana Paramonova heads the bank as previously. By law, the president has the right to again resubmit her candidacy to the Duma. By that same law, the Duma may decline it for the third time as well. How will events develop? The president will make the decision, and currently I can't say anything more than that, but I can say only that for now, I continue to work in the central bank. The currency rises and falls are not predicted. What regards food prices, the State Committee of Statistics states that in the third week of July, food prices have grown by only 1%. That's according to the State Committee of Statistics, the lowest level in the last year. So predictions that after July, when the custom tariffs are introduced, prices would jump drastically. These predictions are not coming to pass. Prime Minister of Russia, Viktor Chernomyrdin, today was in the Tyumen district. He visited plants which process hydrocarbon raw materials, met with directors of the oil, gas, drilling companies, and tomorrow he will participate in the meeting of the Siberian Agreement Association. The Prime Minister's trips throughout the country contribute to popularizing the movement Our Home is Russia. So again, about the concept of that movement. The movement, Our Home is Russia, which has in the press gained itself an image of a party of power, doesn't identify with that image. This was stated at the press conference by its heads, Leonard Veit, Alexei Glavkov, and Alexander Shokhin. With respect to the government, the movement occupies a position of critical solidarity, and its main creed, it sees the transition to social support through enlivening the economy. Market economy connotes a strong state. But unfortunately, in our country, the liberal phase in the development of the economy was accompanied by an unfounded departure of the state from the economy. The leadership of the NDR defines its platform as a new course of economic policy, the essence of which is the stable economic development on the basis of accumulating national capital. In pursuing that course, Alexander Shokhin suggests a basis of the government following a policy of financial stabilization using non-inflationary methods for the state to regulate the economy. In the political plan, Our Home is Russia intends to amalgamate with all parties and movements and blocs except for the communists and Zhirinovsky followers. Only a blocking which excludes extremists, which severs those parties and movements which lead the country to collapse in war, will permit us to form that parliament which is necessary for the country and the people. The Our House is Russia intends to have its conference the end of August, beginning of September, emphasizing that funds for all forthcoming functions will not come out of the country's pocket, but from respectable sponsors, the names of which are not yet publicized. Large funds will be needed by the government to provide finances for social programs. By the end of the year, the level of unemployment of Russia will increase up to more than 8%. In December of '96, it will reach 15%. That's calculated on the basis of employable population. If one compares to last year, the number of the unemployed has already doubled. This was stated at a session today of the government of Russia. The head of the Federal Employment Service, Fyodor Prokopov, stated that to resolve the problem, a federal employment program is necessary, to which Gennady Milikyan, the labor minister, insisted that in the employment service itself there should be more active work in foreseeing and modifying unemployment. At the session, they also spoke of the performance of the tax service, the tax police. Today, the budget has under-received 37 trillion rubles from that department. And money is needed by everyone today. Science in particular, today at 7:05 Moscow time, from the Baikonur Space Center, the launch of an automatic cargo ship, Progress M28, was accomplished. The rocket carrier Soyuz-U launched into the Earth's atmosphere a transport ship M28, which should dock with the station Mir on the morning of the 22nd of July. This is the 46th launch of a craft such as Progress, and overall they've taken more than 100 tons of cargo into orbit. The M28 will deliver to Mir food, fuel, and scientific equipment. This is the last launch of the Progress before the start of the 20th Basic International Expedition. It's scheduled for the end of August or the beginning of September. Among the crew members is the representative of the European Space Agency, Thomas Reiter, who will break all the space records set by Western Europe. He will spend in orbit 135 days and will be the first of all European Space Agency cosmonauts to emerge into open space. In the end of October, together with Yuri Gidenko and Sergei Avdeyev, he will meet on board the Mir the crew of Atlantis of 5, 4 Americans and 1 Canadian. Incidentally, all of them are military people, and what programs they are to execute together with Russian cosmonauts, one may only speculate. The international station Mir Atlantis will exist for only 2 days, and today at the Russian orbital station, Anatoly Solovyov and Nikolai Budarin prepared for an emergence into open space, which is scheduled for tomorrow at 4:30 a.m. The weapons of the 14th Army, so that they wouldn't become an object of trade with unavoidable consequences, is being demolished under strict control. Today it was reported that explosions are already heard at another site in a different polygon 25 kilometers from the town Rybnitsa. The new site was selected in such a way so that explosions could not be heard on the territory of neighboring Ukraine. And in the headquarters of the Russian forces in Pridnestrovye, they're concerned with the need to refute rumors. They refute the existence of a political purge among the officers' ranks. The commander of the operative group of the Russian forces in Pridnestrovye, Major General Valery Yevnevich, told us that the organizational measures connected with the transfer of command of the former 14th Army to new ranks is completed. And several staff posts were abolished in that process, which are no longer necessary, and so the post of the head of the artillery of the army was abolished, under whose jurisdiction there's not a single artillery item. All officers whose positions were cut either received similar assignments in Russia or were voluntarily retiring into reserve and remain in Tiraspol. Regarding the assertions that Pridnestrovye is ostensibly on the verge of a new armed conflict, General Yevnevich said, "In Pridnestrovye, the situation is calm. Those people who visit say it's a resort here, and it is so, in fact. There are no armed persons on the territory of Tiraspol. If previously they were evident, they're not here. Everyone lives calmly here. People are involved in their daily personal problems, the type that affect us all, economic, political, but not military problems." In the Russian Security Council, a concept is being developed to create a center to combat terrorism. Interfox was told this by well-informed sources in Moscow. It seems that this will be a titanic center to unite the ministries of defense, the internal affairs, the Federal Security Service, the Main Protection Department, the Federal Border Service, and the Prosecutor General. The center will have under its subordination such special elite units as Alpha and Omega. In any case, such a vision of the center prevails. This is not American cinema, it's our reality. The Moscow and St. Petersburg departments of the Federal Security Service, together with the Ministry of Internal Affairs, completed a 1.5-year operation to expose and detain an established contraband channel which supplies to Moscow weapons and remote detonators activating explosive from a distance of 400 to 600 meters. The role of the purchaser was played by the head of a special subdivision of the Federal Security Service in Moscow and district, who worked in counterintelligence for 20 years and feels that one could only risk the life of an operations member only in dire circumstance, in dire need, because otherwise there's no way to deal with this phenomenon. And as you can understand, probably this is not the best approach when special services begin to infiltrate these gangs and deal with them from within. The Estonian gang is comprised 90% of Russians. All of them are Baltic residents. Their head is also known. More than 30 of its members already arrested. No matter what conditions of residence are, yet not everyone is capable of embarking on this line of occupation. And since they already have, obviously circumstances permitted it. If such a channel existed, let's say, in any Western European country, probably from that country, the special services of that country would be mobilized. How is Estonia reacting? For now, there has been no reaction. In Russia, 13 criminal cases have been filed. Materials in these cases will be reported to the Estonian side, and there is hope that the hand of Moscow will reach the leader of the gang. The Kyrgyzstanian president, Askar Akayev, during these days is touring Southeastern Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. Yesterday, he dealt with a dramatic price jump in his republic on high-demand consumer goods. The population of the republic was literally shocked by an unexpected explosion of prices on flour, bread, and sugar and gas, which went up by 30 to 50%. Contributing to this dastardly deed was the Ministry of Finance's red tape taxation instructions and clumsy maneuvers by the Bishkek mayoralty in relocating fill-up stations. But by 2/3, according to Askar Akayev's assertions, is the response of the mafia to his severe steps against corruption and concrete accusations against several high-placed officials. The president publicly stated that the mafia is influencing government decisions of the highest level. He specifically cited the 7th story of the White House in Bishkek, where the offices of a narrow circle of the highest officials of government and parliament are housed. Accusations of extortion were received by the sugar monopoly companies and pressed against the wall were the monsters who control production and sale of alcoholic beverages, gasoline, and grain. Facts surfaced regarding the secret stockpiling of large quantities of flour and sugar at the very peak of the fruit season. The head of state revealed a sensational figure. Last year, shadow capital comprised 1,369,000,000 soms. That is 10% of the gross domestic product. Meanwhile, to pay the salaries of all the law enforcement organs, Kyrgyzia spends only 2.5% of its GDP. So it's no coincidence that significant portions of economic crimes are committed under the umbrella of those organs. Many laws, including market laws, pave the way to corruption. This was stated by the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. Today is his one-year anniversary at the helm. The day, the 20th of July, 1994, was the day of the inauguration of the first president of Belarus, and this day should become the day of the end of resistance in society and the first step toward adopting civil accord. Along that path to that civil accord during this year, Alexander Lukashenko managed to significantly strengthen his own power and, in essence, completely to neutralize parliamentary power. At least, he received unanimous support at the referendum which he initiated. The president and his team managed to increase the state treasury. As they promised, they overcame inflation, weakening it by 40 times, and filled the empty shelves of stores. Avoiding radical methods of transition to the market, Alexander Lukashenko left the industrial sector in its weak state. The Belarusian president was more decisive and consecutive in his striving to grow closer to Russia, the result of which was the liquidation of customs barriers and borders and endowing the Russian language equal status with Belarusian. The president's promised victory over mafia, corruption, and crime is still ahead. The tightened policies of force structures are convincing in that regard. The occasion for the report of our correspondent from Germany was the assassination attempt on Hitler. From history, one can't throw out pages, but attitudes toward those pages do change. The 20th of July, 1944, in the headquarters of the chief command of the fascist Wehrmacht in Wendler Block, an assassination was attempted on the Reich Chancellor of Germany, Adolf Hitler. A bomb planted under a massive table didn't yield the desired result and marked the beginning of a blitz of the entire German resistance movement. Under Müller's were all 4,000 of its participants. The leaders were executed, Gerald Beck and Count Stauffenberg. The failed coup, which paved the way to Hitler's military failures, is still ambivalently assessed by historians. During all the post-war decades, German educators attempted not to burden the memories of their compatriots with the embarrassing Nazi past, and this led to the fact that in school textbooks, the entire Nazi period of rule is contained in only 5 pages. The 50th anniversary of the end of war saw new adjustments following the flexible tactics of official Bonn. Today, Germans prefer not to speak of the role of the Russian army in defeating fascism, but how it enslaved Europe and established bloody regimes and caused the suffering of the German people before and after the war in pro-Stalin GDR. In this sense, the terrorist act of the 20th of July is presented as the only brave, honorable attempt of honest people to save the country from death. This is the explanation for including in the Constitution today an unprecedented point about the right of citizens to resist the authorities if the latter commit actions which undermine the foundations of democracy. The FRG has protected itself against the threat of the re-emergence of any dictatorship, said the official figures of the country, and extolled the July coup as one of the brightest pages of history, attempting to forget the past of its country. And in Moscow, the former allies in the anti-Hitler coalition presented a gift today to the Museum of the Great Patriotic War on Poklonnaya Hill. Near this table, which was used by the members of the Tehran Conference in 1943, soon the busts of the Big Three will appear. The Roosevelt bust already occupies its place under glass. The Stalin one is in a safe, but the sculpted portrait of Sir Winston Churchill today was presented to the Museum of the Great Patriotic War on Poklonnaya Hill by the representatives of the Embassy of Great Britain. Sir Winston appears lifelike, except for the famous cigar. The bust is an authorized copy of the monument, which stands in London near the Parliament building. The British military naval attaché, Captain Parrish, said the gift was reciprocal. 2 months ago, Andrei Kozyrev presented the Imperial Military Museum in Britain the bust of Marshal Zhukov. It would have been logical to give a bust of Stalin, not Zhukov. Well, in severe and difficult times, the people choose leaders who lead them to victory. And, of course, for us, that That would be Zhukov. There's no doubt about that. From the side of Great Britain, it's Sir Winston Churchill. Moscow intends to build by the year 1999 a large capital cultural center, and construction of the underground complex on Manege Square, the mayor of Moscow discussed today with President Yeltsin, visiting him in the Central Clinical Hospital. Also in the discussions was the first deputy of Lushkov, Vladimir Resin. The press secretary of the president reminded that on the day of Boris Yeltsin's hospitalization, he had intended, together with the mayor, to visit the construction site, which is located across from the Kremlin wall. With this, my time on the air unfortunately ends. I bid you farewell and hand the microphone over to our sports commentator. All the best. Good evening. On Channel 1, the sports news. At the chess super tournament in Dortmund, the 20-year-old Russian Vladimir Kramnik, playing the white figures, beat the Englishman Nigel Short and is the sole leader, ahead, as previously by 1 point, of Anatoly Karpov and Petro Leko from Hungary. Karpov, also playing the white figures, defeated the Ukrainian Alexander Belavsky. And now Arkady Milkayan reports from Sochi about those who preferred in the heat of summer to watch unusual swimming rather than to swim themselves. Few can keep afloat well in the water. Moreover, others can't swim as quickly, but to swim 16 kilometers is truly a feat. The first Russian championships on the open water gathered 19 swimmers from Moscow, St. Petersburg, the Republic of Tatarstan, Lipetsky District, Volgograd, Omsk, and Murmansk. From the initially from the start, a stiff competition for leadership developed. After 800 meters, ahead is Mikhail Anich and the bronze winner of last year's World Championships, the Muscovite Alexei Apatyev. But soon after, Alexei gets ahead, and with an enormous gap from his pursuers, in 4 hours he reaches the finish. Here they are, the last moments of the first championship of Russia at the marathon distance. And in Moscow, the National Academic Rowing Championships ended. In the women's teams, the team of 8 of Olga Bochukova won. For the men, the team of 8 of Anton Chimashentsev won. In the teams of 4, the winner is the last year's silver prize holder, the team headed by Dmitry Ovechkin. Today, the first friendship matches were held between the Russian hockey clubs. In Moscow, the Army team beat the Wings of the Soviets 2-1, and Dynamos beat the Chemists 4-1. In the 12th round of the Russian Soccer Championships for women, the winners were the Voronezh Energy with a score of 8-1 against the KDE's Idel from Ufa, and the Samara Army Air Force team beating Kaluzhanka 6-1. The leaders each have 27 points. At the tennis tournament in Stuttgart, in the quarterfinals now, is the top-seeded player, the Austrian Thomas Muster. And today, one of the best masters of hard court, the winner of the Open French Championships, easily overcame Bernd Karbacher. The score in the sets was 6-4, 6-2 for Muster. Confidently leading the way to the finals is Sergio Bruguera from Spain. Again, he only needed 2 sets for victory. Continuing the tournament race is the Spaniard Alberto Costa, and to the joy of the local fans, the host of the tournament, Karl U. Steb. In Washington, concurrently, is the tournament with a prize fund of $500,000. Here, beginning with confidence, was the first world seed, Andre Agassi. The semifinalist of Wimbledon defeated Rudolf Gerber 6-2, 6-2, and Agassi is in the 3rd round. A unique hat trick may be performed by Jason Stoltenberg. The last 2 years, he reached the finals in this tournament, but lost to more famous rivals. How will it be this season? And now, about other events, our traditional video kaleidoscope. We begin with the World Fencing Championships in Holland. The swordsmen competed. The men's winner was probably the main favorite of the Olympic champion of Barcelona, the Frenchman Eric Schreiken. The Russian Pavel Kolobkov, the gold medal holder from the World Championships of the last 2 years, lost to him in a heated battle in the quarterfinal. Among the women, Ione Kiniuk from Poland was first. The Russians didn't even make it into the 1/8 final circle. Yesterday's level of the Tour de France was of a purely symbolic nature. The athletes honored the memory of the Italian Fabio Casartelli. Today, fierce competition resumed. However, the 17th level was won by Eric Zabel from Germany. Zhumilin Azurjoroparo from Uzbekistan finished second. The yellow shirt of the leader is confidently worn by Miguel Indurain. At the American soccer tournament, the Uruguay team, which yesterday beat the Colombians 2-0, is in the finals, where it's to meet with the winner of the pair, Brazil-USA. In the French championships, the matches of the first round were held. The champion of the country, Nantes, beat Auxerre with a minimum advantage. Strasbourg tied Montpellier, 2 balls by the Brazilian Anderson, brought victory to Monaco over Rennes. That was the sports news on Channel 1. In conclusion of the broadcast, I would like to again return to the events of the Tour de France race. Here for victory, even in a single level, not superhuman, but even insane efforts have to be applied. All the best. Good evening. Lately, cyclones have been storming the eastern part of European Russia. Another reason for the inclement weather is shifting from the White Sea to the Republic of Komi. In an area of a cyclone and atmospheric fronts in the Nenetsk Autonomous District in Komi of the Volgovyatsk area, it's windy, rainy with isolated thunderstorms, and it will become cooler, not higher than 13 to 18 during the day. In the Volgovyatsk area, up to plus 21. On the Arctic coast, plus 8 to 13. On the Kola Peninsula, in Karelia and in the Arkhangelsk district, the pressure will begin to mount and a cold anticyclone will gradually form. Rains will cease and the north winds will decrease the temperatures at night to plus 4-9, during the day plus 9 to 14 degrees. In the northwestern area and in Estonia, in the zone of an atmospheric front which has come to this area from the Atlantic, it's partly cloudy with some light periods of rain, thunderstorms, plus 18 to 23. In Latvia, Lithuania and in the Kaliningrad district, in a belt of heightened atmospheric pressure, probability of rain is quite low, plus 20 to 25. In the central region, in the morning-evening hours, some light rain is still possible, but during the day, an area of heightened pressure will move in. Therefore, variably cloudy skies are expected, not significant precipitation, plus 18 to 23. A broad anticyclone with a center over Poland will sustain warm and dry weather in Belarus, Ukraine, and in Moldova. During the day, just partly cloudy skies, 21 to 26 degrees. In the central Chernozem area and on the central Volga, with the passage of an atmospheric front, some brief rains are expected with thunderstorms and wind squalls. Temperatures are plus 21 to 26. The weather is not changing on the lower Volga, northern Caucasus, and in the Transcaucasus region. Here it's dry and hot, plus 25 to 30, with some places of temperatures of 32. In the afternoon, there are isolated thunderstorms possible. On the Black Sea resorts, prevalently with the precipitation, air temperatures 26 to 29, temperature of the seawater 23 to 25. In St. Petersburg, it's cloudy with some temporary light rain during the day. During the night, 10 to 12. During the day, 18 to 20. In Moscow, variably cloudy skies. During the night, some light rain, 11 to 13. During the day, no significant precipitation, 20 to 22. That was the information about the weather for tomorrow. All the best.